And now, Lifestyles Unlimited presents the Real Estate Investor Radio Show. Over the next hour, we unfold your map to financial freedom. You'll learn how to retire through investing in single-family and multifamily real estate. You'll learn how to create cash flow and build wealth so you can have the time and money to live the lifestyle you want.
Welcome to the show. My name is Al Gordon, and as always, I'm working on your financial freedom. And on today's show, I'm going to try something a little bit different. Now, actually, it's not totally different because I've actually talked about this topic before, but I've never talked about it the way I'm going to talk about it today. Let's get into the ownership of things, the ownership of assets, the ownership of tangible assets, as well as maybe intangible assets. You want to talk about ownership? Let's talk about ownership. And I think the best way to talk about ownership is to talk about the NFL. Yeah, you heard me correctly. The NFL. There are a lot of similarities between owning an NFL team and, let's say, owning an apartment complex. Did you know that? And here, let me make it a little bit more interesting for you. There are 32 teams in the National Football League. 32 teams. So guess how many owners there are? Well, technically there's 32 owners, but there's actually more people that have ownership interests in NFL teams. Did you know that? Did you know that in order to buy an NFL team, first of all, you're going to have to come up with like $1 billion, okay? Yeah, $1 billion. Those things are expensive, and they're not really making any anymore, right? There's 32 teams, and that's all there are. There's not a 33rd team that's been created that you can go out there and buy. And why is that? Because the National Football League controls its entire market. It determines the number of teams that will play in their league. It determines how those leagues are organized. It also determines who is authorized to buy an NFL team. Did you know that? Now get this. This is an interesting fact that I learned that I had no idea about. With the exception of the Green Bay Packers, anybody looking to buy an NFL team has to be a person. Has to be a person. What does that mean, has to be a person? Well, the NFL doesn't want big, faceless corporations buying NFL teams. They want to have a face to the ownership. Now you think about it, like probably one of the most famous owners out there, I was going to say players, but one of the most famous owners out there is Jerry Jones, right? I mean, he's like a household name. You've heard the guy's name, right? The guy's done a really good job of marketing the Dallas Cowboys. He's done a really good job of owning that team. Did you know that Donald Trump had an option to buy the Dallas Cowboys way back in the Flintstone days before Jerry Jones owned it? And he turned it down because he thought that the Dallas Cowboys were just a losing organization. And then what happened? Jerry Jones bought that organization, a losing organization. They were a losing organization when Jerry Jones bought them. And what did Jerry Jones do? He did the same thing that a Lifestyles Unlimited lead would do to an apartment complex. The same thing. He went to work turning that organization around. He went to work turning around the asset that is the organization and all the assets that are owned by the organization. He turned the entire NFL team around. And what happened? They started winning. They were no longer losers. They were winners. And now I'm not a Dallas Cowboys fan, so it's going to hurt me to say this. They won some Super Bowls. Yeah, they won the big game. And if you look at what the Dallas Cowboys are doing right now in the current NFL season, they're like dominating. Have you watched their games? Holy smokes, they beat the snot out of the Giants. They did. It was like 40-10. And then they beat the snot. I forgot who they were playing this week, but it was 30-10. Notice the trend there? They're allowing their opponents to score 10 points while they obliterate them with points. Yeah, pretty cool stuff. So I think Jerry Jones has built an incredible organization, and I think that organization has a lot of value. So what I want to do, since I'm a huge NFL fan, I'm a huge college football fan. Heck, I'm just a huge football fan. And I think the reason I'm a huge football fan is because when I was a child It was the only sport that my parents would not let me play. Only sport. And the reason was because of my knees. And some of you are going, all right, Al, where are you going with this? Because it's easier to own an apartment community than it is to own an NFL team. And part of the reason is that the barriers to entry to the NFL are pretty thick, whereas the barriers to entry to you buying an apartment community, they're not necessarily as thick. Now, they may seem just as thick to you because you may not understand how to get through that barrier. And that's one of the things that we do at Lifestyles Unlimited. We will teach you the easy route to get through the barrier. There's really no barrier to you. The barrier is actually in your mind because you don't understand how it works to own an apartment community. I'm just telling you, I'm not picking on you. I'm just saying you don't know. And I was no different than when I was in your shoes. I didn't understand. First of all, I didn't even understand that I could own an apartment community. Owning an apartment community to me was like as tangible as owning an NFL team. Probably wasn't ever going to happen, probably wasn't ever going to be in my wheelhouse, and not something that I really thought about, not something that me as my middle-class self would think about, right? But now that I have a millionaire's type self, in other words, I've transitioned my mindset away from being a middle-class person to being a person with a millionaire's mindset, I look at things completely differently. And Lifestyles Unlimited opened that horizon up to me. It allowed me to see things that I did not know were there. Yeah, and I'm not talking about hallucinogenics. I'm talking about real things, real tangible things. All right, so what are the similarities between owning an NFL football team and owning an apartment complex? Well, they both involve investment in tangible real assets. Tangible real assets. Yeah, like in the NFL football team lane, it includes the team itself, maybe the stadium, maybe they own the stadium, or maybe they lease the stadium, and any related properties associated with the team. Maybe they own a place where they practice off-site, or maybe they own facilities for the organization itself. Did you know that the two NFL teams that I looked at, I was curious how many employees an NFL team had, because most of us think the NFL team is just like what? The owner, the coaches, and the players, because that's what we see on TV, right? So you think, less than 100 people, right? Wrong. There's like 750 people that work for the Dallas Cowboys. And I thought, well, let me check the Houston Texans. And you know what I got from the Houston Texans? 750 employees. So those organizations are very big organizations that have a fairly large payroll that doesn't involve the actual players. Oh, and by the way, the players themselves are considered employees of the organization. They're not property. Now, some of you would think that they're property because they're traded or they're excluded from contract talks or something. That is a contract-related matter. So essentially what the football team is doing is they are contracting for labor, okay? But that labor is considered to be an employee of the organization. It's not a 1099 person. I don't know. Maybe they can do that too. But the research that I found said that, even though they do contracts for the labor, the contract actually links them as an employee to the organization. So when you're a football player, you're an employee of the football team that you're playing for. It's kind of cool, I think, right? But what about those apartment complexes? What about the tangible assets owned by an apartment complex? What are they? Well, it's the physical buildings and the land. Purely, that's what it is. It's the physical stuff, the physical buildings, the physical land. That's what you own. You own a parcel of property that has improvements made upon it. Kind of like the football team, they own similar stuff, but they use their stuff for different things. We, as real estate investors, we use our apartment buildings to offer clean, functional workforce housing to a demographic in our society that desperately is looking for clean, functional workforce housing. Seriously. The NFL teams, they're doing something a little bit different with it. They're providing workspaces for their employees. Yeah, workspaces for their employees. I don't lease any of my properties to my employees. So there's a big difference there. Now, here's another difference that I want to bring up since we're talking about the types of assets. Ownership of an NFL team includes intangible assets like the contract players that I mentioned, the team branding, and intellectual property rights. Okay, the primary value lies, now get this, in the team's performance and its brand. Yeah, the team's performance and its brand. That's what creates value in an NFL team. When it comes to apartment communities, ownership of an apartment community involves actual tangible assets in the form of physical properties, land, and buildings. Now, those football teams, they have some of those tangible properties too, but remember, they have those intangible assets too. When it comes to real estate investing, the primary value comes from the real estate holdings, specifically from leasing out those tangible assets that we offer. Does that make sense? I know that makes sense to you. What about revenue generation? I mean, they're essentially both businesses, right? Yeah, they're both businesses. I mean, think about the NFL. They generate a significant amount of revenue. But get this, in the apartment communities that I'm invested in, they also generate a significant amount of revenue. Pretty cool, huh? Now, NFL teams, they earn their money through ticket sales, merchandising, broadcasting rights, sponsorships, and then there's a laundry list of other things that they can do. Apartment complex owners generate income through rental payments from the tenants that live in the properties. And now get this, there's actually 28 other ways that we can increase the revenue streams in apartment communities that have nothing to do with raising the rents. Nothing to do with raising the rents. There are different forms of revenue generation, and we will teach you these things when you become a member of Lifestyles Unlimited. Now, you're probably going, well, aren't there some differences between them too? There are some differences. For instance, the NFL, they get revenue streams primarily from broadcasting rights, ticket sales, merchandise, and sponsorships. I mentioned that, right? And they're closely tied to team performance and fan engagement. Understand that. If the team is not doing well, their value tends to go down. In an apartment complex, the income for the apartment complex is generated through rental income from the tenants that live in the property. The revenue is typically more stable and less reliant on short-term fluctuations. The reason for that is because we offer one-year leases. We provide some type of stability. But there are apartment communities out there that don't do very well. They exist out there. And the reason they don't do very well is because they suffer from ailments. They suffer from a lack of good common features or cleanliness or just keeping up with the other properties. Those properties tend to lose money, like the NFL teams that lose money. When we come back from the break, more on these comparisons. Stick around.
Got questions? Call Lifestyles Unlimited at 855-497-4335. The Real Estate Investor Radio Show continues next.
For 30 years, I've taken the smartest people I could find and then held them up as examples for you guys to learn from. We're all only as strong as our best people. But the best part about this is that these best people are willing to give back.
Ready to learn from the best? It starts with our free online workshop. Stop depending on your paycheck. Quit worrying about retirement. Register now at lifestylesunlimitedworkshop.com.
Creating the lifestyle you've always wanted. You're hearing Lifestyles Unlimited's Real Estate Investor Radio Show.
Welcome back to the second half of the Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show. My name is Al Gordon, and as always, I'm working on your financial freedom. And what I should have said, really, to be honest with you, I should have said, welcome to the third quarter of the show, because we're actually making an analysis between what it's like to own an apartment community, and we're comparing it to owning an NFL team. Yeah, it's something that a lot of people probably think about doing once in their life. Like, wouldn't it be cool to own the Houston Texans, or wouldn't it be cool to own the Green Bay Packers? Well, technically, a lot of people do own the Green Bay Packers because they're the only team that's actually incorporated. Yeah, there's a real long backstory on it, but it's the only team out there that, first of all, probably won't go to another location because all the shareholders and from what I read said there was like hundreds of thousands of shareholders in the Green Bay Packer organization. It's a nonprofit organization and it supports the Green Bay Packer team, which is in one of the smallest markets in the United States. But part of the reason the Green Bay Packers will probably never move anywhere else is because the shareholders live right there in Green Bay. Yeah. And here, let me just give you a difference between real estate investing and NFL investing, shall we? In real estate investing, especially at Lifestyles Unlimited, we say live where you want, invest where it makes sense. Yeah, we say that all the time because maybe you know your assets won't do well for you, say in California, but you want to live on the coast in California because it's a beautiful place to live. But the assets don't work there, so you buy your assets in, let's say, Texas. So you own where it makes sense and you live where you want to. But the Green Bay Packers, they got to own where they live. Yeah, they can't just, well, I guess they could transport the team. I guess they could, as a shareholder vote, they could elect to either sell the team, which they probably will never do, or they could elect to move the team somewhere else, which they will probably never do because all their fans are right there in Green Bay. Why would you move your Green Bay Packer team to someplace like San Antonio, Texas? Other than the fact I would love to have an NFL team really close to where I live because I live outside of San Antonio. That would be really cool to me. But because I was like when the Las Vegas Raiders were considering coming to San Antonio, I was like, oh, yeah, come on. And where did they wind up? My hometown of Las Vegas, Nevada. Yeah, my hometown of Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm going to say it again. They're not in San Antonio. Okay, so I lost. It is what it is. Okay, but at the end of the day, I don't own the Las Vegas Raiders, right? I guess that's the proper term for them. I called them the Oakland Raiders before, just like some of you might call the Washington team the other name that they used to be called, not the Commanders. Okay, trying to be clean, trying to be nice. Let's get back into this discussion. Now, let's talk about operational management. What is operational management? Operational management is the manager of the day-to-day operations of the organization. Yeah, it's not necessarily watching buildings every day. No, it's watching how the operation works. Now, both NFL teams and apartment community owners are responsible for the day-to-day operations of their assets. End of story. Buck stops right there. Okay? It includes, now on the NFL side, overseeing your staff, your players, your coaches, your employees, all right? And for apartment community owners, it is the management of your property managers, your maintenance personnel, and any other employees that you have on staff. And for both of the entities, it's ongoing maintenance of your assets and ensuring that your facilities are in good working condition. That's a key point, ensuring that your facilities are in good working condition. Now, ironically, what they do in the NFL, I think it's kind of interesting. They'll go in and they'll decide that they need a stadium, and they'll either go in and they'll find a stadium that exists, and they'll drop a lot of money into it to bring that standard up to the current standard of the NFL. Yeah, because the older standard probably doesn't meet what the NFL is requiring for its standards. So they actually go in and do rehab. Now, another thing they will do is they'll negotiate with the municipality, and maybe they will have them assist with the building of a new stadium, because obviously that football team existing in that municipality is going to be a revenue driver for the businesses and for the people that live in that community. Does that make sense? So those communities tend to want to partner with these NFL teams to build a brand new stadium. In either case, whether you get a rehab stadium, in which case you might get the municipality throwing money in too, or it's a brand new stadium, you're getting like new condition, which means you're not having to worry about a lot of ongoing maintenance problems, because anything that could go wrong in the stadiums it's either new or it's been repaired to a like new standard and therefore is essentially new in condition and will have a general lifespan of whatever that lifespan is. We do the same thing in apartments. We do. Now, we don't, as Lifestyles Unlimited members, we don't normally go out and buy brand new apartment communities. Now, we do have some Lifestyles Unlimited members that do that. Okay. They do buy brand new stuff, but that is a very finite element of the overall Lifestyles Unlimited community. The majority of us, we do the rehab stuff. We find the old stadium. We find that it has value. We breathe new life into it. We bring it up to current standards, and then we put it into service. It's clean, functional workforce housing. So a lot of similarities between how the NFL manages operations and how apartment owners manage operations. Now, there are some differences. So, for instance, managing an NFL team involves complex logistics, including player recruitment, coaching staff, game schedules, player contracts, and a deep understanding of the sports industry. Okay? Those are intangibles that you must deal with. Now, when it comes to the apartment ownership piece, owning and managing an apartment complex involves property management, maintenance, resident relations, and property regulations. And it is going to require some expertise in real estate management. Now, where do you get that expertise? Well, you get it from a place like Lifestyles Unlimited. That's what Lifestyles Unlimited does. We teach you how to be an effective owner of residential income-producing assets, either single-family assets or multifamily assets. I don't care what kind of asset. As long as it's residential, we will teach you how to own it, operate it, and get this, make a lot of money with it. We will teach you everything you need to know. When you're done with the education, you will be, now get this, you'll be sophisticated. Yeah, sophisticated. Yeah, that's the term that means that you know what you're doing. It means that you have expertise in the real estate management and ownership fields. We have taught you what you need to know, and we're going to turn you loose on society to go do some great things. But of course, you're not going to do it alone, because we will have also inspired you to obtain a mentor, somebody who's been there, done that, who's willing to work with you to help you ensure your success. And we also will teach you how to build a team around you. Yeah, a team. Yeah, it's not just the NFL that gets the team. You, now get this, you as a real estate investor, you have to build a team around you too. That team is not just the property managers that take care of your property on a day-to-day basis. And that team is not just the maintenance people that do the maintenance work for you. It's also the team that you build that includes real estate agents, mortgage brokers, the different trades that are out there. Maybe you need a CPA. I'm going to tell you need a CPA. Maybe you need a real estate attorney. I'm going to tell you probably need a real estate attorney too. These are people that need to be on your team. Now, throughout the show, I've been citing the similarities. I've also been pointing out the differences. But my research is tending to prove to me that there's actually way more similarities than there are differences. Way more similarities. So if you've ever had the inkling, if you've ever had the desire to own an NFL team and you don't want to deal with the complexity of trying to raise $1 billion even of your own money, or $1 billion worth of your own money and maybe up to 70% of your best friend's money, if you don't want to deal with the complexities of being an NFL owner, why not be an apartment complex owner? Now, I'm here to tell you, the majority of the apartment owners in Lifestyles Unlimited, they don't have over $1 billion worth of assets. Now, you think about it. What does an apartment community cost in the current marketplace? Well, it depends on the size. It depends on the location. It depends on the condition. It depends on the financials. There's a lot of things that go into it. But here, I'll give you an example. Here's two properties that came across my desk. One is a 14-unit for $2.3 million. It's in Austin, Texas. Here's another one that's 28 units for $2 million. It's in Houston, Texas. Now, both of these assets are positioned to give you great returns. And you could buy either one of these assets and put either one of these assets into your portfolio. But there's a lot more information that you need to have, other than the fact I just spewed out a couple of numbers. The point I'm trying to make is there are two apartment communities on the market right now that I just told you about. How many NFL teams are on the market? You don't even know. And if an NFL team is on the market, it's probably going on a whisper price. There's probably a broker controlling the access to the owner and the owners association. And now get this. Why am I doing the whisper price thing? Okay. The point is this. You know what happens in apartment complexes? The same thing. Whisper pricing. Yeah, there's what the brokers put on the market. And then there are apartment owners that say, hey, you know what? I don't want a big marketing campaign, but I'm willing to sell for X amount of dollars if you can find me somebody. So what do the brokers do? They go to the people that they know, that they have relationships with, like all of my Lifestyles Unlimited buddies, and they say, hey, this particular property is being offered for this amount of money. Would you be interested in it? It's kind of cool. It's kind of like that hush-hush under the back room, under the table backroom deal, right? There are even more similarities between owning an NFL team and owning an apartment community. And I'm just here to tell you, it's a lot easier to do the apartments. There are people who are not very wealthy that own apartment communities, and you know who they are? They're called Lifestyles Unlimited members. Now, let me explain that to you, because it sounds like, well, they're failing. No. Get this. They're starting where they're starting. They're starting with whatever resources they have. They're buying their first multifamily apartment community. They're repositioning that asset in the marketplace, improving the financials on that asset, and as a result of that, increasing the value, which to the layman means increasing the price that that property can command in the marketplace. So they're increasing the asset's value. They're increasing the operational revenues on that property. This is how the values go up. There's a direct link between the income streams that the property makes and the value of the property. So they're pushing the value up. Now, these first-time apartment community owners may not be millionaires yet. They may not have $1 million worth of assets on their balance sheet, but they are on pace to get there. And maybe they get there with their first multifamily apartment community, and maybe they don't. Maybe they need a second one. And if they do, that's totally fine. Get the second one. And maybe they make it to millionaire status in the second one. If they don't, no problem. We'll get the third, and maybe we make it on the third. Whereas other Lifestyles Unlimited members, they make it to the millionaire status when they buy the asset, the very first asset. It just depends on the size of the asset. It depends on the amount of money that they can raise. It depends on a lot of financial things that we will teach you when you become a member of Lifestyles Unlimited. We will help you crack this code that is floating around in your mind right now because you're trying to figure out how to do this. And I will tell you this, unless somebody lays out the roadmap for you and shows you how to get from point A to point B, you might as well draw a squiggly line all over your paper, because you will never draw a straight line between A and B because you do not know how to get from point A to point B. That's why you need Lifestyles Unlimited. We are uniquely positioned to teach you what you need to know. We need 16 hours of your time, just 16 hours of your time. And in that 16 hours, we will fill in all of the blanks that have been created by today's show in your mind. We will fill in every blank, and you will become a sophisticated real estate investor, meaning you will have the knowledge to go out and do the things that I've articulated on today's show. And even though we're not going to teach you how to buy an NFL team, and maybe you don't want to buy an NFL team, because when you compare the price of an NFL team to a price of a good quality multifamily apartment community, man, I'll tell you what, those apartment communities are cheap in comparison to those NFL teams. And you know what? You don't have to deal with players' attitudes. Oh, did I say it? Did players have attitudes? Well, maybe some of them do, and maybe some of them don't. But at the end of the day, if you want to do what I'm doing, if you want to do what the 50,000 members of Lifestyles Unlimited are doing, go to lifestylesunlimited.com, sign up for a free workshop, and let's get you going.
The information and opinions you hear on the Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show are those of the hosts, guests, and callers. The Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show is for entertainment purposes only. Please consult a professional regarding your personal investment needs. Nothing presented constitutes an endorsement, recommendation, offer, or solicitation to buy or sell any product or security.